Today we're upgrading our studio computer from Windows 10 to Windows 11. We found out that the processor does not support Windows 11, so we'll have to change out the processor to a new processor and also upgrade the BIOS and then upgrade the operating system. So this is going to be the first time we're doing this with an actual system that we're not actually building brand new, going directly to an operating system. I'm hoping that we can take it from this without having too many licensing issues or too many problems with software or too many problems with hardware. To know if you can upgrade, you'll need to know what motherboard you have, what processor you can go to based off of that motherboard, and if that new processor supports Windows 11. To get this information, you can load up MS Info, and MS Info will bring up a breakdown of all your hardware that's currently in your system. And what you're looking for is the system manufacturer, knowing what type it is, which in this case it's Gigabyte, and then your system model, which is going to be your motherboard. So to get this reference, we're going to open up a browser. So what we're going to do here is bring back up of MS Info. We're going to take a copy of this system model, if it's going to let me do it. If not, I will have to just bring it over a little bit and share this screen a little. And we're going to do Gigabyte AB350 M-DS3H. I'm going to find that motherboard here. I'm going to bring my mouse over a little. There we go. And it says revision 1 or version 2, revision 1. So we're not sure here. I'm going to say revision 1 because it doesn't say anything. So let's click on that. And we go over to support. We're going to go to the BIOS. Actually, you should go to really CPU support first. Make sure that the CPU that you're purchasing is on this list, and it does match something that's on the Windows 11 supported list. To find out if it's supported, you can always just type in the processor and then find out if it's Windows 11 compliant. Most of the time with AMD, it's a little bit tricky, but with Intel, it's a little easier. Intel, I think it's generation 9 and 10, I think, going forward. And then everything above that should work with no problem. AMD, it's a little trickier. You may want to reference Microsoft's site for that. Today, we're going to be installing this Ryzen AMD Ryzen 5 5600X, which is definitely compliant, and it should be on this list, so we'll just double check it just to be sure. AMD Ryzen 5 5600X, it's right here. 6-core Vermeer, 7mm, and it's supported on BIOS F51G. Let me see if the motherboard, see if MS Info has it. The BIOS, we're just going to upgrade to the most current one. We're just going to probably download it. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to download it anyway. It says version 3. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, usually that's not right. So you might want to go into your BIOS to find out exactly what it is saying. This is DS3H-CF. All right, hopefully I got the right one. We'll find out. So go to downloads. You're going to go down to BIOS. You're going to get the most current one, F51H. Let me just double check. Let me double check what the release notes are on the right side, just in case there's something that we have to upgrade to a certain BIOS before doing that. Which, if you see here, before updating to this BIOS new version, you must follow the steps for F40. So F40. Due to BIOS ROM size limitation, no bristle ridge. Okay, we're not using that anyway. Okay. Just scroll down a little bit just to make sure that there's nothing funky here where it says one's required over another. So that's okay. Let's get to the newest one. 51H, it's going to download in a zip file. We're going to take that zip file and we're going to put it onto a flash drive. This flash drive, plug it into the unit, and then we're going to transfer those files onto this flash drive. and then we're going to reboot into the BIOS and show how to flash the BIOS. So let's go. You have to do this before you put in the new processor, just in case the processor is not supported. From the old BIOS, we want to make sure that we have the most current one and up to date before we start to flash anything. Before we start to change the processor, you'll want to have the BIOS flashed. So let's go to there. We don't need that. We do need the zip file open, so we're just going to use WinRAR here. Just put this onto the main path of the D drive. There is a README file. If you want, you can do this through a command line prompt. We're not going to do it through a command line prompt. We're going to just do it through the flash utility on the actual system. So what we're going to do now is just reboot this machine and go into the BIOS. Now that we're in the BIOS, I'm just going to move myself around here. There we go. So we're just going to go down to QFlash. We're going to say update BIOS. We're going to choose the BIOS that I just downloaded, 51H. Next. Should verify the file. Hopefully it works. Okay, it's verifying. It's verified. It's going to now go from version F51H to F51H. Okay, so we already did this. But if you were doing your own, you would hit start and go. I'm not going to do that because obviously it's the same version. So I'm going to hit escape. We're going to go back. So what we're going to do is we're going to just change out the processor at this point. We'll put the new processor on and we'll go from there. Get the system off the ground, ready to change it. I'm just going to open up the side panel. It's a little bit, just a little too black for this. Okay, open up that. Close that out. Let's see what we got in here. It's a little dusty. If you have a can of air, it's probably the best time to use it. Obviously the processor's here, processor CPU heatsink fan. We're going to just take this off, just disconnect, and I want to use a screwdriver, unscrew the screws. It's a little noisy. Now there is a back plate on this that may drop down. When I go to do this, I may have to open up the other side. I just heard it pop. So it probably just dropped down. Maybe. Huh. It's really on there. Oh, wow, this has not been moved in a while. Okay. Just make sure it's all the way. Can't see that side. Okay, so that's off, and that just popped right out. Now sometimes this happens when the CPU is a little bit stuck on here. It'll pop out of the socket, which is not good. It's not bad either as long as it goes straight up, which I pulled it straight up. There's no problem here. The only problem is that you could damage your socket if you don't know what you're doing there. This is a thermal paste problem. When the thermal paste gets stuck to the bottom part of the CPU and it becomes no more liquid, it is now a solid and it now is stuck. I'm gonna have to pry that apart later. To pry that apart, I use like a very thin metal tool to get it stuck underneath this and just to pull that back up. You really shouldn't use your fingers like what I'm just about to do, which is a bad idea. Do not use your fingers, just use a metal prying tool or sponger or a plastic sponger tool you can get underneath there and just lift this up gently to separate the heat sink from the CPU. I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to do that a little later. Let's get the new one installed. We'll put that off to the side for now. This socket here, this AM4 socket, we're just basically going to put the new processor in there. Just check the socket for dirt or dust. If there's dirt and dust, do not put your finger on it like I just did. You should probably use a can of air to blow that off. The processor we're putting in is an AMD Ryzen 5 5600X. So let's cut open this box. Knife, here we go. All right, so let's open up that. We're going to use the new CPU and the new heatsink fan. We're not going to use the old one. But we are going to rebox out of the processor just for anybody that may want an inexpensive computer that does not run Windows 11 but only runs Windows 10. So the new one comes in this little clamshell. And it comes with a sticker. We're not going to put any stickers on there, but obviously it has on here a little arrow, which is now looking like a dot at this point, but there is an arrow in the corner here that's going to also go and correspond to the arrow on the motherboard, which is on this side. And we're going to pop that processor in that direction. It should go in with almost zero force. So you should be able to just drop it in place. There we go. Should line up and drop in place. Now what you're going to do is just hold it with your thumb, make sure it's down, push the lever back down, and then it's in the socket. I'm going to go with the new heat sink and fan. So we're just going to pull this out. Now this one already has pre-applied thermal paste. I'm not a very big fan of this. You can use what's there already if you want, or you can wipe this off and put new thermal paste if you want. I'm going to leave it for now, but I'm going to probably go back later and actually wipe this back off and put proper thermal paste. I really don't like this type because, as you can see, it gets stuck to the CPU when it gets a little hot, and it becomes a little bit of a problem. Now, there's a bracket here, but it's obviously missing because it fell down. So we're going to have to open up the other side of the case and grab that and push it forward. So let's go. Let's see here, it's sliding. It's not good. Hopefully not too bad. You know what, we'll put it up right. It's just a piece of metal, but metal with some plastic on it. Here's what came out. This is just a piece of metal that has the 4 screw holes. That's going to go to the back part of the motherboard. I'm going to put this downwards just so you can see where it is, but I may have to put it back upright so I can actually screw this in. So back here, you'll see the back of the motherboard is exposed. You can put this back in place and put that in the holder. Now, if you're doing this by yourself, you could also put a piece of like blue tape or something on this side so it doesn't fall out. I'm going to just use both hands and then screw this in. You could also put like this box underneath, let's say, flip it back over, and it'll hold it up there in place. Personally speaking, I can't do that, so I'm just going to put it back up. We're going to use these 4 screws and mount it on those 4 holes on the opposite side. I'm going to have to use a little bit of gravity with me, so we may not be able to actually see all that, but it's just an installation of a processor. We're going to lift it back up. And now, yeah, not really able to see it, I guess. Let's see if there's a way to do this. I think that might work. Okay, I don't have any tape, so we're just going to use the box back there. And yeah, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. This right here is where I'm going to be putting the CPU cooler. And I'm just going to position away from the RAM. So there's a little notch here that's on the CPU cooler. I'm going to put it away from the RAM, so at least this way we have room to actually install it and it won't crunch the RAM. So we're just going to put this in place. Just line up the holes with the screw holes. and then just screw down, reverse again. Make sure don't put it all the way tight. Obviously go to corners, each corner. We go to the reverse corner, just get it in there a little bit more, and then click it down. Okay, once everything's clicked down, just give it a little wiggle, make sure it's good and it's in place, which it is. Make sure to plug in the CPU fan into the one that says CPU fan on the motherboard. It's the one that you pulled it out of before. Tuck the cable a little bit if you can. There we go, just to get it out of the way. Now that's in there, we're ready to close it back up and give it a quick test to make sure it still boots. Try to see if we can go to load Windows 11 at this point. I'm just going to close up this case, close up the top, close up the other side. Since I have this open, most of the time you should take the advantage and just blow this out and clean it out. Right now, I'm not going to do that. I have it scheduled for next week for cleaning, so we're just going to clean it out next week. But for now purposes, we're just going to close it up. But if you have it open, you should probably take this time to clean out a little dust, get everything kind of cleaned up before you close it back up. First boot, you go with a new processor, you're going to see a little notification stating that the processor has changed and that your TFTPM might be corrupted or changed or structure is changed. That's okay because the other processor didn't have TPM. So this is basically, well, they call it FTPM on AMD, but the TPM module, it was not actually on the other processor. So this processor actually has it. So it's not really corrupt, it's just going to replace it. So press Y to reset TFTPM. If you have a BitLocker and encryption enabled, the system will not boot without a recovery key. That is true. So if you did use BitLocker on the system, you would have a problem if you don't have your recovery key. But if you don't use BitLocker, which I have not used on this machine, it should be perfectly fine. So we're just going to say Y to reset it, and we're going to go into the BIOS. By hitting the delete key, it may have to reboot again. Now AMD does take a little longer to reboot than Intel, so just have patience. It has to figure out the memory trainings and a whole bunch of other stuff. So let it just reboot. Hopefully it'll let me in the BIOS. Still figuring it out. There we go. Okay, it's going to say BIOS has been reset. Please reconfigure your BIOS items if needed. This may happen whenever you change your CPU or you change a motherboard, especially you'll end up with a clear CMOS information. That's okay. Just hit OK to it. Hopefully it'll let me in the BIOS at this point, or it may reboot again. So what I want to make sure is I want to make sure FTPM is on, and I want to make sure also date and time are correct. Looks like it might be. Boot manager is set correctly. It's responding a little funky here. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so AMD CPU FTPM is on. You want to also make sure that resize bar support is auto. This is moving really slowly for some strange reason. I'm gonna have to find out why that's happening. Operation, no. We're just gonna make sure that secure boot is on, which I think I might have missed it in the other screen. Not fast boot, there's secure boot down at the bottom. Come on. This is really slow. I don't know why this is acting funny like that. Secure boot is enabled and I'm in standard mode, that's fine. So we're gonna hit escape on this. We're gonna go back over to save. and save and exit. And hopefully this isn't going to go this slow. Yeah, that, or we have something. There we go. Now it's putting into Windows. Now, since the processor changed, we're not sure how the licensing is going to go with Windows. So hopefully this will be okay. I'm going to log in really quickly. So far, okay. Something's happening with the USB in the corner there. It's still installing stuff, so it may be installing or having a malfunctioning mouse. Where's my mouse? Keyboard's working. No mouse. So let's give it a second and see if it comes up with a mouse. If it isn't, maybe I plugged in the wrong mouse. Okay, I made a slight mistake. I plugged the mouse and keyboard into the wrong USB ports because I forgot that these keyboards and mice are a little bit quicker and they require the faster ports. So the machine did reboot, which is great. Let's check to see if activation is still good first before I have to go see if I have to buy a key or not. All right, Windows 10 is still activated. So now what we can do is we could force up Windows 11 at this point. Let's check the updates. It's probably got a few pending already. Let's install these updates. Now, of course, it says this PC does not meet minimum requirements because it hasn't run health check. So we got to run health check. We got to get that really quickly. It brings you to a page that didn't have the actual link until you go down further to actually get health check. All right, so we're just going to download and install health check really quick. If you have Windows 10, that's the easiest way to check to see if your computer will support Windows 11. So I'm not worried about backing up right now. I already backed up it before. So this PC now does meet Windows 11 requirements, seal results. So now it has a TPM module, processor that it supports is there. It definitely has more than enough RAM. It's got 8 instead of 4. System disk has more than 64 gigabytes, and the processor has more than 2 cores, which obviously it's a newer processor. So yeah. Okay, so it does meet those requirements. This is still installing its current update. After this installs, then we are going to install Windows 11 after that. It's like watching paint dry with these numbers. Come on. When you're upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11, I also recommend that you update not just your BIOS, but you also update all your Windows drivers. So like your graphic card driver, your motherboard drivers. Be sure everything is up to date before you actually start the process so it doesn't fail on you. I've seen a lot of machines where they failed because it just looked for a newer driver that just wasn't there. So what I recommend is definitely upgrade your drivers currently before we do that. I'm going to show how to do that right now. Okay, we just get one pending Windows install. We're just going to stop that for a second. We're going to quickly check our graphic card. If you have an NVIDIA, you go to NVIDIA GeForce Experience, go over to drivers. There's obviously a new one, so click download. Download that. Go back to your motherboard manufacturer. Just search for that. I think that was the right one. And go to support. And go to Windows 10 64-bit right now because that's what we're still on. Just get the most current drivers. So just download my audio, chipset. I really don't need everything else. I just need just the basics, which is your chipset, your audio driver, your LAN driver. They may have multiple versions on there. Obviously get the one that's most current. And we're just going to download that. Going to extract that. Just extract here. zipped it twice. Chipset, extract to a folder. Let's do the chipset. I try to do everything at once just to get it out of the way quickly. You can also do these one at a time and then reboot if you want. Okay. It's pretty much next, install all the drivers. Same thing here for NVIDIA, you have to hit Express. If you have an AMD graphic card, you could just go right to AMD and then just download it straight from AMD and get the newest Adrenaline driver. That's what you want. To show you what that looks like, just go to amd.com. And then you go to downloads and support and go to your AMD graphics and AMD chipsets, click on drivers, and then you want to click on the one that says auto detect, which is the easiest way to go, and it'll install Adrenaline for you with any chipsets if you have a chipset driver. I'm doing a separate chipset driver that's from the motherboard manufacturer just because I have an NVIDIA graphic card. I don't want to load all of AMD's programs. Usually won't do that, but I like to just keep the one that's from the motherboard manufacturer anyway, just so I have that ready to go. This is still needs a restart. This is still installing. We're waiting on 2 or 3 things. Just say no, I don't want to restart now because we're doing a bunch of other installs. So just close everything. Get everything prepared for one major restart. Video graphics, that's probably going to blink the screen. When you're installing any type of graphic card driver, it usually blinks the screen. That's normal. You'll get like a little flicker. That's fine. It just turns, there it goes. Flickers on, flickers off, you're fine. That means it's all installed. It wants to restart. We're going to just say restart later. We're going to close this. And we're just going to hit restart now from Windows because that's the one that loaded first. It's very exciting. It's going to be just a bunch of percentages going, and once those percentages finally go through, it's going to reboot again, and we should be ready to install Windows 11 at this point. The reboots do get faster with AMD after the first initial reboot. The first initial reboot, it has to determine the CPU, it may have to make changes, it may have to also change your RAM timings. Your RAM timings will also be like retraining. It's a whole process. It's fine. It's not that slow, but for some people it may just seem like it's never booting. Just wait it out and see if it actually boots. And by wait it out, I mean like literally wait 5 minutes just to be sure if it's getting stuck on you or not. Just going to do one more quick update just to make sure that there's no more updates. Of course, it just loaded another audio driver. It's fine. It's installing the new one. All right, we'll do that later. Okay, so obviously it's still not running the PC check. This happens a lot with Windows 10 going to Windows 11. You're going to have to give it a little push. And the only way to do that is with the media creation tool, which is going to do that for you. So we're going to go to Google again. We're going to say Windows 11 Media Creation Tool. And we're going to click on Download Windows 11. And what we're really doing is not the installation media. We're going to do the Windows 11 Installation Assistant because we already have Windows installed. If you don't have Windows installed, then you want the installation media tool and have that automatically do that for you. So let's hit download now. It's going to download in the corner here. Just run that. Say yes. It's going to give you the legal agreement. I recommend you read it and then click accept and install. No one's going to read it. It's going to go to downloading. It should start downloading right away. You can close the browser at this point. Doesn't need that anymore. It's going to go through step 1 of 3. It's going to download first. it's not going to make any changes until it starts to install. Sometimes installing fails. If it does fail, you probably missed a driver. So go back and check your device manager, see what other hardware that you have installed, and make sure you're most current on all the hardware. Now, if there's some hardware that's giving you a complication to going from Windows 10 to 11, you may want to double check to make sure that hardware is compliant with 11. That will also hold you back. So if you have like add-in cards or anything like that, you'll want to make sure that those cards are Windows 11 compliant before you start this process. I don't really have any add-in cards. I've only got a USB-C PCI Express card in there, which I know is Windows 11 compliant, so it shouldn't be any problem. But if you have anything more advanced than that, you may want to take a look to make sure you have proper drivers before you start. If you are getting a new processor, make sure you get a processor that fits, first of all, your motherboard, then second of all, double check to see if it requires discrete graphics. This one requires discrete graphics. I have a graphic card in there, that's perfectly fine. But if you're using onboard graphics, or in other words, on the motherboard graphics, or on chip graphics, sometimes that's what it's called, you'll make sure to get another processor that also has graphics built into it, because obviously it won't work without that. You won't even get a boot. You'll have to put in a graphic card for that to work, if it requires a discrete graphic card. This installation process can take probably up to an hour if your machine is pretty slow, or you have very little, or if you're just meeting the minimum requirements for Windows 11, your machine will take a lot longer to install Windows 11, so just be patient. This shouldn't take me too long. It should be jumped through pretty quickly. And of course, when you get something like this, it says something went wrong, try again. Now this error usually means I missed the driver, probably, but let's just double check it. 0x800 7007F. What happened to just having regular errors? Okay, this one's saying a third-party app might be a problem, but let me go into here. Let's go into actually Microsoft's page. It's saying Windows might be a driver issue still. Let me cancel this. Cancel. And we're just going to do a reboot because we did do an install of that audio driver. It may have not all the way installed. That is a possibility. It may have required 2 reboots. Or we're missing another Windows 10 update that won't allow me to go to 11. That could be another possibility. Okay. Let's make sure there's no audio drivers coming up or anything else funky. We'll wait 2 seconds. Also check your NVIDIA graphic card driver, make sure that that's fully up to date. Sometimes there's more than one patch. It is up to date. We check device manager. Device manager looks clean. So there should be no reason for this to go in. We're just going to rerun it. So let's go back to downloads, installation assistant, and let's just give it another try. It's going to verify the download. It already downloaded once, so it's not going to have to download twice. Just has to re-verify the files and then start trying to install. Now it says here it's okay to keep using your PC until it restarts. Don't do that. Make sure all of your programs are closed before you start any of this installation. I wouldn't trust having another program open while you are actually installing 11. That could be dangerous. It could be a problem. So I recommend you stay away from that. Just be very patient through this process. You'll see it get stuck on a number and percentage for a while. That's normal. It's probably checking something, maybe also updating security settings or patches. Getting it ready for Windows 11 can take a while, especially on certain percentages. 74% I've seen it get stuck at for a very long time before it jumps up to 100% pretty quickly. So this is normal. Just relax, don't do anything. Also make sure your power management is set properly before you start this also. Make sure your power management is set to high performance, that you're not on anything that's going to let the computer go to sleep You don't want the computer going to sleep during the middle of the installation, which reminds me, I should probably check that. So we're just going to go to Edit Power Plan. We're just going to go to Advanced Settings and make sure Sleep is off, which it is on Never, Hibernate Never, for right now. As I stated before, it does take some time and it does hang at a lot of percentages. Why this is taking a very long time is the amount of RAM on this machine is only 8 gigabytes. If you're going to Windows 11, I do recommend going to at least 16 gigabytes or going to even higher, 32 or 64 gigabytes. The machines with Windows 11 at 8 gigabytes, it is a little bit more tough to run, even installing and patching the updates. Now this system is not a really high-end system. This is more for like our studio here. So it's really for just basically configuring like some screens and some other little small things or for demos. So it's really not really made to go that fast, but if it's something that you're daily driving, you may want to have more than 8 gigabytes of RAM. You may want to have 16 or 32. It's just a thought, especially with Windows 11, since Windows 11 does require a little bit better memory management. When it gets to this point where it says your PC needs to restart to Windows 11 and please save your work, plug in your PC and leave it turned on if you want to restart your computer, blah, blah, blah. Just hit restart now, make sure you have everything closed as you should have had it before, and it will start installing the rest of it. So let's hit restart. It's gonna say you're going to be signed out. That is fine, just hit close. You gotta give it a minute. It will eventually reboot. It looks like it's doing nothing, but it will actually reboot in like about a minute. There it goes. Now when it goes to reboot, it's going to actually do a little bit more installation and then it should be ready for Windows 11. When we're in Windows 11, we're going to actually run a bloatware removal tool. We have another video on that, but I'm just going to go over it quickly here. I recommend that you go over there to pick up the Windows 11 bloatware removal tool that will remove all the bloatware that comes with Windows 11. Get it fully prepared for the best performance that you can get out of a unit based off of with all that garbage software. It will still continue updating the PC, so this is normal. You will see it saying working on updates. Please keep your computer on. Just follow the directions, just leave it on. As in anything else, when you go to install any operating system, be sure that you're on constant power, that you're not on something that you're going to have to worry about losing power anytime soon. So if you have a UPS battery, I recommend being on a UPS battery during this time, during installation, just because it is fragile. If you do lose power during this operation, it won't break your computer, but it will definitely set it back for reinstallation again and may start over. So where that may drive yourself nuts, or it may even corrupt files that are on the system. So I do recommend that you are connected to stable power, that you're not doing this during a lightning storm or something else. At least Windows gives you a percent complete, so at least you know what percent you are on the actual installation. This does help a little bit with knowing if you could walk away from your computer or come back. Most of the time when you're installing this, you could actually just walk away. This is not that exciting looking at percentages and the little spinning bar. Once you've seen a spinning bar spin around in a circle once, you've literally seen it done it 2 billion times. It does catch up finally. It's at 92%. There we go, 100%. Okay, it may do another reboot, or it may just bring you to Windows, which we got lucky. We just in Windows. Sign in still the same. If you noticed, everything else has changed though. It's gonna say, hi, we're getting things ready for you. And it's gonna install your profile and probably a whole bunch of crap software you don't want. Now, if you remember this from Windows 10, they changed this a little bit. The Windows 11 one, it says it may take a few minutes. Don't turn off your PC. That's kind of normal. But the background's kind of like doing its little breathing, blurry effect kind of thing. It's neat. Doesn't tell you when you're going to be done yet or not, so it's still going to take a few minutes. The more RAM you have, this does go a lot faster. RAM seems to be really the deciding factor. As long as you have like good RAM and a good SSD or NVMe drive, you should be installing a little faster than this. During this time, you may want to go get coffee if you drink coffee. Almost there. Oh, finally, okay. So when everything gets installed, you'll still have your apps, your programs that you had originally. The only difference, you'll still have the background and stuff like that, but your big difference is going to be your start bar is going to be in the middle here, and it's going to have all this garbage installed, which is really annoying. So I'm just going to grab really quickly the Windows 11 bloatware removal tool. You can go to the other video that explains the Windows 11 removal bloatware tool, which it's just a script from PowerShell. I'm going to show how to run it really quickly. I'm not going to go too in depth on the directions, but you're going to run Windows PowerShell, run as administrator. It is all open source, so you can easily open it up, take a look at it. It's all open as a regular script. I'm going to change to that folder. And I'm just going to run a few commands really quickly. And remove. After we run this, it should get rid of a lot of the programs, and it will reset it to kind of like a defaults without all the telemetry and the other junk also. It removes some of the telemetry. It doesn't remove all telemetry. We can't do that because then your Windows updates won't work. So that would be really bad. After it's done, it'll just say reboot to disable telemetry. Everything's complete. Read your output on the top. It may show some failures. That's okay. If it shows a failure, it may have not been installed, that program, and it may have skipped past it. Now you'll also notice that it didn't remove all of this. You're going to have to remove these manually, unfortunately, because they're not actually installed. They are just launcher programs that will launch and install the apps if you click them. If you noticed, I just did that for LinkedIn. It now looks like it's installing it. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to uninstall. But if you click them, they will install automatically, and you may not want that. So just take these all out. I don't know solitaire either. We don't use Office on here, nor Mail. Windows, Word, we do have that other one. Movies, TV, we don't need. Again, this is up to you. You could pick and choose what you don't like. Now, it does say recommended here. I like to make a few more changes. I'm going to go click on Start Settings. I'm going to change this to more pins because I'd prefer more pins than more recommendations. So that will bring this down, and I'll get a little more room here. Now, I also don't like this bar on the bottom too much, so I'm going to go to Taskbar Settings. I'm going to switch off widgets and chat. I like the task view. I don't like the search box, so I'm going to just hide that. It takes up too much room. And the taskbar behaviors, I'm going to turn my taskbar back to the left where it belongs. And if you want, you could keep it in the middle if you're up to that. I'm okay with it on the left. I'm actually okay with it in the middle too. Depends on the program or the purpose of this computer. That's it for this. Basically, now we're on Windows 11. I'd also recommend you just run a quick Windows update because there's probably going to be 2 or 3 updates that are missing. We also have in the bloatware removable area a way to set your privacy settings. I recommend you watch that video. It does explain all your privacy settings and which ones you should turn on and off. I'm just going to turn off one really quickly. That's very simple, which is under General. I want to make sure all of these are off. I set them on Windows 10 already, so that means they're already automatically brought over. But if they're not brought over, I would recommend that you would reset these and go through them really quickly and make sure that they're all correct. So that upgraded for free. That's upgraded for free from Microsoft, and that basically is the upgrade path. You would make sure that you have a compatible processor, make sure that you have enough RAM, make sure you have enough hard drive space, and therefore you can upgrade to Windows 11. Now, if you don't want to change your processor and you want to go a different route, you can still upgrade your unit as long as the motherboard still supports Windows 11. You can buy a cheap TPM module for your motherboard, but you'll have to match your TPM module with the specific motherboard before you try to install Windows 11, and you'll have to turn on TPM support within the BIOS. So I would recommend processor upgrade because the processor upgrade will be a little more expensive, but it will give you more benefits in the fact of you'll have a newer processor, you'll have a faster processor, and on top of that, you'll have a system that can run Windows 11 with all the new features Windows 11 does support. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next video. You guys have a great day.